Have you ever heard a story told only through paintings, photographs and videos? I invite you to the eastern part of Vilnius. Once it was the most beautiful suburb of the city. City residents came here to rest. This place was called Paupys, from the word wash, due to the strong river current, also due to many underground and surface creeks. It was a convenient place for mills. One of them, the Tiškevičių mill, got into many photos at the time. The special canal was digged for the Tiškevičių mill. The canal and the river formed an island called Saxon Island. People not only drew this beauty but also took photos. These photos are so old that even the first industry is not visible. This fact is impressive because Paupys is the first industrial district in Vilnius. In the late 19th century, a large Holstein leather factory appears. Lipski's brewery, next to the industry, apartment buildings. On the west side, craftsmen lived. 2 apartment buildings were built on the hill for the poor Jews. They were visible in the many panoramic photos. Despite the new buildings, the overall view remained green and beautiful. From the east side, residents were delighted by the beautiful views from Belmont Hill. People loved this place very much. Many of the panoramic photos were taken exactly from this hill. And from the east side, the missionary garden, visitors garden, also a Swiss garden made by the founder of a brewery. During Russian Empire times, there were plans to develop infrastructure in the eastern part. A Rasas residential block was built nearby, and by its example, the streets supposed to expand to the north. Here is the new residential block. Here are 2 apartment buildings for poor Jews. Here, Varvara Pushkina builds a house in the fashionable style of the time. But as you see, everything else remained a clear field. The plans remained unfulfilled. The start of the infrastructure development begins only in the 30s of the 20th century. An iron bridge was built over the river. The canal was buried. Street was built, and the old Tiškevičių mill was demolished. Also, the empty area was covered with wooden garden-type houses. During World War II, the Nazis' 2 houses on the hill turned into a Jewish labor camp. Whoever did not manage to hide or escape did not survive. Here is a video of the eastern part of the district during the Battle of Vilnius. After the Second World War, the modern name of the district appeared, Paupys, which means by the river, and it is the start for the development of heavy industry. With the power of Soviet Union, much of the area was transformed into an electric household counter factory. It was a giant factory that supplied household counters for the whole Soviet Union. The factory employed more than 4,000 people, but not only counters were produced, also counting machines, the prototype of modern computer. Employers did scientific work, registered inventions, but there was more industry in this area. Correctional colony with factory base, knitwear factory, fuel factory, secret military factories, and other nearby factories. Dormitories were made from the former Jewish camp, and even more dormitories were built. Also, during the Soviet times, there were important changes in the infrastructure. On the east side, streets were narrow because of high density of housing. As a result, some of the houses were demolished and a highway was built. But that wasn't enough. After 20 years, even more houses were demolished and the Eastern Transport Hub was built, which is still an important element in urban connectivity today. But it took some time. In 1999 have not been completed yet. On the west side, the area from the old craftsmen was cleared, and a street was built straight up the hill. But the development of industry and infrastructure had serious consequences to the visuality of the area. If before it was the most photographed area in the city, to understand how this area looked in Soviet era and in the first decade of independence is a very hard task, because we have not much photos. And this should be the fundamental question of visual history. Why we see one things and other things don't? The case of Paupys may have a few answers. First, taking photos of industry in Soviet Union was banned. Remember that some of the factories were secret and secure. Other reason that the area crowded with industry had become dark and boring. With the exception of Dzerzhinsky's museum, there were no monuments, no squares, no modern buildings, things that could be culturally important for that time. As a result, people have lost interest and stopped taking photos of this place for 50 years. After the Lithuania restored its independence, factories remained in the operation for some time, but Lithuania did not need such an amount of protection and the most of the industry became abandoned. One artist still managed to invite the country factory staff to the last evening and capture the disappearing generation of factory workers. Former dormitory, where was a Jewish labor camp, had a bad appearance. Paupys became the most neglected area of Vilnius. Just take a look. This is a major tourist area. There was a tourist bus park. And here is a vast, dirty, deserted area that remind Pripyat. Some things were burning, some things were exploding. This place scared tourists and residents for 14 years, until the recreation of the district began. The cleanup work began with joy. They had to work some time. After clearing the area, a residential block was built with cinema, market and restaurants. Now, city residents can walk along the river and admire the views. It should be noted what past relics had survived. First of all, the building of a Holstein factory that has extraordinary beauty. Also a house that is older than the entire first industry. And 2 dormitories that are tied up, and a monument to remember the killed Jews was built. You can also view marks from the old canals. Also should be borne in mind that the place where the missionary garden was remains a cozy place to relax. The Paupys is reborn and the story continues.